This is about psychological warfare. A specific type of warfare designed to distract, misinform,
But trust me.
and anesthetize the brain.
We interrupt our programming. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow.
우리는 우리 마음에 파고드는
We must remain vigilant at all times
항상 경계의 고삐를
and be alert to their insidious attack on the mind,
이전에도 그러했듯이
for they have come before
이러한 공격은 또
and they will come again.
Good everybody, peace. Today's video is going to be about, I'm going to read a few ways on how the government tracks us and how they buy the data from these certain vendors, if you want to call them that, or, you know, there's so many apps on all of our phones that track, and they sell this information to the number one buyer, which, believe it or not, is the government. And if you research and read, and Europe has a stronger privacy act, but I see a pattern between these events. You know, the one that happened, how many years? It's been about 18, 19 years since that event in September, and then the event that happened 2 years ago, the C with the 1 and the 9-0 event, and all these ones that happen at schools and stuff. Like, I see a pattern with these events and how all these laws come into play afterwards. And I'm going to get into this, and then I'm going to jump in to show you the Patriot Act that was passed 45 days after that event in September. So, you know, it's crazy how I got to be careful on what words I use and how I phrase things. And this is all through research that anyone could look up on Google. Is it all 100% accurate? I'm not saying that. I'm just presenting information that I've read and also that I personally believe, or know strongly is being done. They are. If you look at when Obama was in power or Biden, how the Obama phones came into play. I paid for my phone my entire life, and then all of a sudden the state was giving out free phones. And I always thought right away, there's something bigger to this. I'm always looking at situations in the bigger picture. Not, oh, I just got me a free phone. I'm looking, well, people pay out their butt to keep a phone on, and you're giving free ones out. And, you know, I instantly started thinking of the old days, how they used to listen to phone calls. You could either climb the telephone pole. Back when I was growing up, I would watch the phone company climb the pole for landlines, and they would literally have a phone that they could clip on the wire, I think it was, or it goes into the test of their phone line or your phone line, and they could listen to your phone calls. Or you could sit in front of your house in the van and use different devices to tap. Sorry if you hear yelling outside. These people have no respect around here. And it always seems when I'm recording, people make noise, but let's push on. So I started thinking, well, cell phones, they're pinging off of cell towers everywhere. You can hack a cell phone miles away or almost anywhere. So what better way to just give people phones and then, you know, study. Well, let me read this. Let me get into this real quick. Privacy is eroding fast as technology offers government increasing ways to track and spy on citizens. The Washington Post reported there are 3,984 federal, state, and local organizations working on domestic counterterrorism. They use, all right, let me finish this. Most collect information on people in the U.S., Here are 13 examples of how some of the biggest government agencies and programs track people. Now this is an old article, as you can see, from April 9th, 2012 by Bill Quigley. You could go look, it's at www.commondreams.org, and you could go look it up yourself. We'll go with the first one. The National Security Agency, the NSA, collects hundreds of millions of emails, texts, and phone calls every day and has the ability to collect and sift through billions more. Wired just reported NSA is building an immense new data center which will intercept, analyze, and store even more electronic communications from satellites and cables across the nation and the world. Though NSA is not supposed to focus on U.S. citizens, it does. 2. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, the National Security Branch Analysis Center, has more than 1.5 billion government and private sector records about U.S. citizens collected from commercial databases, government information, and criminal probes. 3. The American Civil Liberties Union and the New York Times recently reported that cell phones of private individuals in the U.S. are being tracked without warrants by state and local law enforcement all across the country. With more than 300 million cell phones in the U.S. connected to more than 200,000 cell phone towers, cell phone tracking software can pinpoint the location of a phone and document the places the cell phone user visits over the course of days, weeks, months, or longer. 4. More than 62 million people in the U.S. have their fingerprints on file with the FBI, state and local governments. This system, called the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, the IAFIS, shares information with 43 states and 5 federal agencies. This system conducts more than 168,000 checks each day. 5. Over 126 million people have their fingerprints, photographs, and biographical information accessible on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Automated Biometric Identification System, called the IDENT. This system conducts of 250,000 biometric transactions each day. The goal of this system is to provide information for national security, law enforcement, immigration, intelligence, and other homeland security functions. I'm just going to butt in real quick and say these are some of the reasons why, I don't want to say excuses, or reasons why they're tracking in people's data and tracking phones and looking into phones and all that. They say terrorism, immigration or illegal immigrants, right? Terrorists, of course, with the after that incident in September, and the same with the C-19. That's another reason they track. So privacy, I don't really believe there is any. 6. More than 110 million people have their visas, and more than 90 million have their photographs entered into the U.S. Department of State Consular Consolidation Database, the CCD. This system grows by adding about 35,000 people a day. This system serves as a gateway to the Department of State Facial Recognition System, IDENT, and IAFSIS. Damn, alphabet boys, man. They got a lot of agencies. Number 7. DNA profiles on more than 10 million people are available in the FBI Coordinated Combined DNA Index System, the CODIS, National DNA Index. 8. Information on more than 2 million people is kept in the Intelligence Community Security Clearance Repository, commonly known as scattered castles. Most of the people in the database are employees of the Department of Defense, the DoD, and other intelligence agencies. So that should be something we should look into, people, is the scattered castles. 9. The DoD also has an automated biometric identification system, the ABIS, to support military operations overseas. This database incorporates fingerprint, palm print, face, and iris matching on 6 million people and is adding 20,000 more people each day. Now I'm a butt in on number 9. In some states, when you get arrested, I was reading, they take your fingerprints, your palm prints is automatic. Now they'll scan your face and scan your iris. This is no bullsh crap. I was reading about it in a few states. I think New York, Chicago, these bigger states and like these big cities, or Illinois, shall I say, not Chicago. It's not. It's a city. But yeah, man. And they say for the reason is because they can scan your face on cameras, and they're making a way they can scan your iris too on cameras, and all your information will come up. Boom. So if you're in camera somewhere, um, it will scan your face and all your information will come up. Where you live, your social, bing, bang, boom. There you go. Everything. Number 10. Information on over 740,000 people is included in the Terrorist Identities Data Mart environment, TIDE it's called, of the National Counterterrorism Center. TIDE is the U.S. government's central repository of information on international terrorist identities. The government says that less than 2% of the people on file are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents. They were just given permission to keep their non-terrorism information on U.S. citizens for a period of 5 years, up from 180 days. 11. Tens of thousands of people are subjects of facial recognition software. The FBI has been working with North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles and other state and local law enforcement on facial recognition software in a project called Face Mask. For example, the FBI has provided thousands of photos and names to the North Carolina DMV, which runs on those against their photos. Okay, I said that right. Which runs those against their photos of North Carolina drivers. The Maricopa, Arizona County Sheriff's Office alone records 9,000 biometric mugshots a month. 12. The FBI operates the Nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, called SAR, that collects and analyzes observations or reports of suspicious activities by local law enforcement, with over 160,000 suspicious activity files. SAR stores the profiles of tens of thousands of Americans and legal residents who are not accused of any crimes but who are alleged to have acted suspiciously. That number 12 should blow your mind way open. Red flags, bing, 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 bing. Suspicion has become a crime. 13. The FBI admits it has about 3,000 GPS tracking devices on cars of unsuspecting people in the U.S. right now. Even after the U.S. Supreme Court decision authorizes these only after a warrant for probable cause has been issued, they can do this. But, they bend these laws and do what they want. The future. The technology for tracking and identifying people is exploding, as is the government appetite for it. Soon, police everywhere will be equipped with handheld devices to collect fingerprint, face, iris, and even DNA information on the spot. and have it instantly sent to national database for comparison and storage. If this don't wake you up, people, Bloomberg News report, the newest surveillance products can also secretly activate laptop webcams or microphones on mobile devices, change the content of written emails mid-transmission, and use voice recognition to scan phone networks. The advanced technology of the war on terrorism, combined with differential courts and legislators, have endangered both the right to privacy and the right of people to be free from government snooping and tracking. Only the people can stop this. So, as you've seen in the other video, I was talking about how, they track the phones and these different events and stuff are, I see a pattern in how these events and then laws are passed, and they use these events to, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like a loophole in a way to get what they want, and for us to lose our rights in increments, and for them to cramp down. And this was one thing I noticed right away, man, right away. It says militarized law enforcement was one thing I noticed, and it made like every American a suspect, right? Their main thing was, it's for our safety. We don't know if you're a terrorist, right? And the same thing with the school incidents and stuff. At a time that they're trying to pass certain laws with the GUN, it just so happens that all this stuff happened. My whole life, I've never seen anyone do anything with these schools, right? And now all of a sudden that they want to make it very difficult for people to have the Second Amendment. You're going to penalize the people that can legally carry and most likely protect people from illegal carriers and people trying to do harm. You're going to penalize the good people that can carry. I don't get that concept. Well, I do, but not for it to be anything good. I get I get the agenda behind it, and how they're using these things to take our rights in increments, these events. So I thought this article was very interesting, and I know I share a lot of articles, and people like probably think, well, I could sit here and take notes. I'm not gonna lie, but I only have a phone. I know it's excuses, but I want to make better content. I have so many good ideas. When I research, I am like a detective or an inspector. And I look at things from every angle, whether it's something I agree with or I don't agree with. There's a lot of times I read the truth and it doesn't fit the way I thought things went. You know, I don't get mad like, other people, and put up a defense mode and say, call people dumb or you don't have a college degree. But enough of me rambling. I thought this article was interesting, and that's, like I said, that's one thing I noticed was, it states here, in the aftermath of 9/11 attacks and launch of the war on terror, the United States honed and developed a number of tools of social control, from using drone strikes to attack foreign targets to employing enhanced interrogation techniques. The U.S. government greatly expanded the scale and scope of its activities in the name of combating terrorism and protecting the person, property, and liberties of U.S. citizens. But in reality, these supposed enhancements to our security threaten the very rights they are purported to protect. Nowhere is this dynamic more pronounced than in the arena of surveillance. The expanded police state powers granted in a time of crisis persist even today. 2 decades after the initial incident, the result is a reduction in privacy and liberty for U.S. citizens. Other unintended consequences of these dynamics drive some of the country's most pressing social problems. And it's very true, man. I I don't know. I really just I'm gonna keep reading because this type of stuff really uh irks me. It's just when you figure this stuff out, it's like you know these people are snakes, man, and it, it's just I'm just tired of the BS, man. That's it. But let me keep reading. The surveillance state is not new to the war on terror. Established in the early 20th century, the government increasingly adopted police state characteristics over time. Officials recognized this progressive expansion in the early 1970s. The Church Committee investigated and reported on the systematic abuses of the intelligence community, stating that virtually every element of our society has been subjected to excessive government-ordered intelligence inquiries. The committee further noted that such activities ran counter to U.S. constitutional principles, including freedom of speech, political activity, and the right to privacy promised by the Fourth Amendment. The war on terror allowed for a continued, pervasive expansion of federal surveillance powers. Shortly after the incident in September, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act. Now let me pause for a minute. I don't know what to do. I don't want to make this video too long, and I had the Patriot Act up because that was the one thing that also followed with that incident. And I advise people to go research the Patriot Act. Maybe I'll put a quick Wikipedia thing right here. This act expanded many of the government's surveillance capabilities. Government agencies should search private property. Hold on. Government agencies could search private property without first notifying the owner. Officials could review information held by third parties. The act weakened Fourth Amendment protections by expanding tap and trace searches, whereby officials can gather information related to phone calls. The Patriot Act was not the only expansion of surveillance state post that incident. President Bush relaxed constraints on the National Security Agency, the NSA, imposed by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. The NSA was allowed to engage in searching the emails and phone calls of U.S. citizens without a warrant. These powers were formally authorized and expanded by Congress in 2008, man. I smell treason. Other agencies expanded their reach as well. The Department of Defense, working with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. DARPA. You gotta research them. They're involved in a lot of stuff. Began work on the program Total Information Awareness. This program sought to gather a broad swath of information: phone, banking, travel, and medical records, with the hopes of using predictive policing to try and identify terrorists. Now, something else I must, these terrorists, supposed, right, or alleged terrorists, this whole thing it makes more sense the more I research on how this whole incident opened up a whole bunch of stuff for them to strip us of our so-called rights, right? This constitution that seems the people in power never obey. They seem to somehow pass laws without going through the people, right? Or the Congress. They say, follow these laws. You're free, but you must follow these laws. And for people to think they have freedom, man, and I hate to say no disrespect to no one, but you must be dumb if you think we're free. These people constantly throw these so-called freedoms in our face and say we have them, but when we go to use them, we still get arrested. Yeah, you know, if you got money and a good lawyer, yeah, you can fight, but a lot of people don't have money and a good lawyer. But anyway, it just gets me mad that these laws that are in place are abused all the time, and the people at the bottom always pay the price, but the people with money get to bend the laws, and people in these brotherhoods and all that, these public servants that's supposed to work for us treat us like garbage. They're supposed to protect communities, and I know I'm getting off topic, man. Let me just start reading again. And they don't protect communities. To me, those are the true terrorists. The surveillance activities discussed by the Church Committee expanded in the War on Terror as well. Throughout the civil rights movement of the mid-20th century, abusive programs like COINTELPRO, Project Chaos, Project Merrimack, and Project Resistance monitored the activities of anti-war and civil rights activists. In a similar way, government in the post-9/11 era utilized expanded capabilities to infiltrate and collect data on different anti-war groups. These groups and individuals within them had their data collected and stored by the DoD, Department of Defense, despite no evidence that these groups pose a threat to national security. So anyone that's against their agenda, they attack. Call them terrorists when they're the real ones. The U.S. government also targeted Muslims and those of Arab descent, both domestically and internationally. This included the FBI paying informants to infiltrate local Muslim communities for purposes of surveillance and information gathering. Internationally, it entailed things such as the INS Special Registration, a system which required non-citizens from predominantly Muslim countries to be fingerprinted, photographed, and interrogated upon entry and remain in regular contact with immigration officials throughout their time in the United States. So much for a free country and people being treated as such. It's just, I don't know. In another partnership, the Department of Defense joined the Federal Bureau of Investigations to issue National Security Letters, or NSLs. These subpoenas allow for government to access individuals' private information without any judicial oversight, provided it's in the name of national security. The FBI had greater ability to issue NSLs than the NSA prior to the start of the War on Terror. The Patriot Act expanded their reach. By partnering together, the two agencies effectively sidestepped remaining constraints on surveillance. This is not an exhaustive list of how surveillance powers expanded following 9/11, though the Patriot Act and other pieces of legislation permitted to surveillance and have extended, reauthorized, amended, or expired, the surveillance state has not returned to its pre-war on terror form. It just continues to expand. The desire of government officials to track and spy on American citizens has by no means abated. The war on terror, without a clearly defined enemy or end date, leaves the door open for agencies like NSA, DoD, and FBI to continue activities like those discussed above. These surveillance activities are not limited to federal government, of course. State and local law enforcement have increasingly adopted the tools of the surveillance state, along with other techniques and attitudes historically employed by the military. The militarization is not new to the post-September incident period, but the war on terror has made the connection between police and the surveillance state stronger than ever before. Once tasked with upholding domestic laws and being peacekeepers, police have found themselves on the front lines of the federal war on terror, engaging in some of the same activities as their national counterparts or working directly on their behalf. The number of Joint Terrorism Task Forces, or JTTFs, have increased 185% after the incident, from 35 to over 100. These partnerships, overseen by federal agencies like the FBI and Department of Justice, work to facilitate information sharing across various levels of government, including state and local police. This means that as opposed to standing separate and serving as a critical check on the authority of the central government, local law enforcement has instead become an intertwined and integral part of the surveillance state. An example is illustrative in addition to receiving a cadre of weapons, armored vehicles, and other materials through the Department of Defense. State and local police have also received military surveillance equipment. Cell site simulators, otherwise known as stingrays, are used to collect and gather information, like location and other identifying information from cell phones. These simulators were originally used aboard for surveillance operations, but are now integrated into many state and local enforcement activities. The use of stingrays has raised concerns among privacy advocates who point out that the simulators capture the data of all phones in a given area, meaning that countless innocent Americans are having their data collected without any suspicion or wrongdoing. Moreover, these simulators are often used under the condition of non-disclosure agreements and are subjected to minimal or no oversight. In analyzing the expansion of the national security state in the 20 years after September, it is clear that the powers adopted by the U.S. government as part of the war on terror cannot simply be reversed. At a minimum, it would require a marked ideological shift among the population. While some object to government surveillance programs, for many they are viewed as necessary. Many people adopt the attitude of, I have nothing to hide. Even if this shift were to take place, rolling back these various programs, and even merely preventing their expansion, would necessitate a complete unraveling of the relationship built between national bureaus, local state agencies, and private companies and contractors over the course of 2 decades. As a result, privacy is abundantly a casualty of war on terror. This is the old way they used to tap house phones and landlines. I just wanted to show these diagrams. And this company right here is Ventel, and that's what they do. And that list is what they extract from your phone. And this is, who they sell it to, the government and different agencies, it shows. And this is the description of their services from the website, who they are. I also want to thank all my subscribers and everybody who watches my video. Please leave a comment and let me know what you think as always. Peace out, be safe, and keep shining.